Happy Friday, everyone. We have rapidly intensifying Hurricane Humberto, but believe it or not, that is the storm that I'm not as concerned with. We have the potential to have Tropical Storm Imelda developing in the Bahamas tomorrow and moving up towards the southeast coast early next week. The uncertainty with this storm grows substantially, a lot more than we typically see in storms that move towards this portion of the country, as the steering currents will collapse and we're going to have interaction between Humberto and future Imelda. Now, advisories have begun on this. It is a potential tropical cyclone, not quite yet a tropical depression or storm, but that should occur during the day tomorrow. And tropical storm watches and warnings have been issued now for portions of the Bahamas. I'm going to get right to it here and share my screen. Thank you so much for joining me here. And we are going to look at what's going on first across the world. Then we're going to talk more about what's going on in the Atlantic Basin. Then we're going to narrow things down even more. So the map is busy, as you would expect here for the second portion of September. Gabrielle, no longer tropical at this point, brought hurricane force winds to the Azores late last night. Now a remnant low pressure system moving towards Portugal, but will weaken substantially and fall apart close to the Strait of Gibraltar. I'm not really going to talk much more about Gabrielle. There is Hurricane Humberto, now a Category 3 major hurricane, expected to be a high-end Category 4, and I would not be shocked if Humberto strengthened faster than this forecast up to Category 5. We've seen things like that happen already this season across this portion of the Atlantic. And now we have potential Tropical Cyclone Nine, which is likely to be Imelda. And I'm going to talk about the forecast track here a little bit later. In the Pacific, Narda the Nerd here, Category 1 hurricane. No threat to land and expected to begin weakening as we get to the weekend. Cooler water awaits Narda as she will turn to the right here. In the Western Pacific, we are monitoring still Neoguri, which is no threat to land, likely to open up and get picked up by a big trough moving in to the Northern Pacific. We do have Opong, which is likely to be our next typhoon, and that is a threat to central and northern Vietnam and the rest of southeastern Asia, with more heavy rain expected here in areas that just picked up some heavy rain from the last typhoon. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about these in the coming days. If there's something major, you'll want to make sure to subscribe to the channel, as I will have community posts. I also have a Facebook page, and I'll be sharing pertinent information there for you all to keep track of these systems. So here's a look at the Atlantic Basin, and you will see Gabrielle basically out of the picture, racing off to the east-northeast. Humberto moving slowly now west-northwest at 5 miles per hour. And the forward speed of Humberto is going to play into what happens with 9, which is expected to be Imelda here tomorrow. The faster the storm can move, the more influence it's going to have on 9 as the storms get closer. There will be some binary interaction. This is known as the Fujiwara effect. That is named after a Japanese meteorologist who coined that term way back in the 1920s and 30s, as two storms can interact with each other. And I've talked a little bit about that in my videos. That's a possibility. But 9 here has a high chance of becoming our next tropical system, and that is moving northwest at 9 miles per hour, located at 20.9 north, 74.6 west. And maximum sustained winds are at 35 miles per hour. So not quite yet a tropical storm, and still lacking the closed circulation to be classified a tropical depression. So we're going to get to the details in just a little bit. Here's a view of the satellite so you all can see what's going on in the Atlantic. I'm just going to circle everything for you. Gabrielle right up here, racing away from the Azores. We do have an upper low behind it, which is going to shut things down with this massive trough across the eastern Atlantic for the weekend and early next week. Anything that comes out of Africa will likely be met with the strong wind shear that is coming from this trough. But past that trough, we do have favorable conditions for Humberto to continue to strengthen, and we are likely going to see future Imelda as that moves northward strengthen as well. And we do have a front that is diving into the central and eastern Gulf and slowly moving up into the Carolinas. There's a bit of an upper level disturbance that will slow down the progress of this front across the southeast and create some heavy rain through the weekend. Even though that front is moving off the coast, it is going to be slow to clear the southeast and will get held up. And the reason it's getting held up is because we have this big area of subtropical high pressure centered near and just to the east of Bermuda. And that high is flexing its muscles and keeping this system from progressing any far to the east, and actually steering both of these systems more in a westerly and northwesterly direction. So we have a lot of players on the map here. Things are getting crowded. We're running out of space. But right now, Humberto is going to be the dominant system, but Imelda is going to have something to say about that as we get into the weekend. So we're going to take a look at that here. Here's a look at the Caribbean, and you can see things are still very disjointed with our invest, but it has picked up thunderstorm activity. In fact, most of Jamaica is covered with rain and storms. The eastern portion of Cuba is covered with heavy rain. We're still getting a lot of rain and storms over portions of eastern and northern Dominican Republic and over the Mona Passage. Very impressive amounts of rain falling over the central Caribbean. So rough travel there. We're also seeing very heavy rain continuing over the Turks and Caicos, where we do have flood warnings in effect. And that rain will eventually progress northwestward into the southeast Bahamas tonight and eventually into the central Bahamas overnight and into the day tomorrow. Central America is actually fairly quiet. We have a weak area of high pressure in control here, and drier air is coming down from Texas into the Western Gulf, and a lot of wind shear and a lot of dry air here will keep things at bay into the beginning of October for the Western Gulf, which is pretty remarkable that we've gone this far so far this season without a hurricane in the Western and Northern Gulf. We still have time this season, so I don't want to jinx things, but certainly this is as quiet a start as I can remember. Meanwhile, the Atlantic has certainly gotten busier, as you all can see. The storms that break through the subsidence here have found a way to strengthen and strengthen fast. And that is a concern in coming years. Is if it gets warmer, we're going to have more rapidly intensifying hurricanes. We may not have as many storms, but the ones that do get formed are certainly going to be ones that are going to be notable here. So a look at the Western Atlantic shows we do have southerly flow out ahead of our system. That is associated with a trough. There's actually a little bit of a weak area of low pressure aloft in here, tough to pick out on the satellite image, but you see the trough here producing some southerly and southwesterly flow. Then you see this area of high pressure producing easterly flow up and around, including Bermuda. So quiet weather across Bermuda for the time being. This ridge is going to lift northward slowly. You've got this trough over here in the eastern United States. It is going to run into the ridge. And in between the two, there's going to be a steering lane that allows this feature to kind of squeeze in between the two features. And the question mark is going to be what ends up happening in here and how fast that system makes its way up. It's very unlikely that it's going to continue in this direction towards South Florida. In fact, I've written that scenario off at this point. That is due to the fact that we have this strong southerly flow. There's just no way Florida is going to get a direct hit. Doesn't mean we're not going to see fringe effects from this system as it grows in size. It just means this is not going to be slamming into Miami or Palm Beach or Jupiter or any of those locations. It's going to be farther up the coast, probably towards South Carolina, but I would keep an eye on it in Georgia, North Carolina, maybe even Virginia as well. So taking a look here as well in the deeper tropics, behind impressively strengthening Hurricane Humberto, we've got nothing really to talk about. Just some scattered development here that is awfully down into the intertropical convergence zone. All right, so taking a look at Humberto, you're going to see there is wind shear and dry air north and west of the system, but this system has been resilient so far today. In fact, the wind shear a little bit less than what models were initially forecasting, and so we've seen the storm strengthen a lot faster at a lot quicker rate than what I think basically everybody was expecting during the day today. We woke up to a category 1. Now we've got a bona fide category 3, and I would not be shocked if we had a category 4 later on tonight. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, this could be stronger than what the forecast is. It's come up, but I would not rule out this being closing in on category 5 strength as we start our weekend. There's a tiny amount of wind shear. You can see the cloud elements here on the western side of the system, a little bit of dry air, but you also see that the center here is small enough to avoid the majority of that. And you see the core is getting its act together here very quickly. So I expect this will strengthen substantially from 110 miles per hour, probably to 150 to 160. Fortunately, it's going to be a fish storm, but if you're in Bermuda, the stronger it gets, the more wave action you're going to see here this weekend. Here's a look at the infrared, and you can see the southern half of the storm already has cooling cloud tops. The eye is warming. It's cleared out, and this is going to be a very impressive hurricane. Reminds me a little bit of Hurricane Aaron when it was at this spot here. It's a little farther northeast of where Aaron was when this happened. But Hurricane Aaron, we all remembered, went from category 1 to category 5 about as quickly as that can happen in the Atlantic Basin. This one may not be that far behind. I would be shocked if it did intensify at that rate, but it will still be a very impressive amount of intensification. It's getting dark out in the central Atlantic, but you see the thunderstorm really blowing up here. You see the gravity waves spinning out from this picturesque looking Category 3 hurricane. And the big shame that I think we have with this is that there's absolutely no hurricane hunter flights expected to fly into this because of the other storm. The other storm is going to take precedence because it's going to be impacting land for the time being. This is going to be more of a fish storm that just sends waves up the eastern seaboard and into Bermuda. We do see some lightning activity on the GLM satellite. That's the global lightning mapping here, but not quite so much around the core of the storm. Occasional lightning strikes, more so much in the bands here to the east. The more lightning we see, the faster we'll see that rate of intensification, indicating more instability. But there is some, and that indicates a very healthy structure here. So we're going to keep an eye on it. You can see this latest forecast will get updated, but the latest has it up to 150 miles per hour at this time. And I still think this rate of intensification is probably not fast enough. 36 hours, I think it'll be 150 to 160 miles per hour. That puts us at tomorrow night. It will weaken some as it gets into some cooler water, and there'll be increasing wind shear. And this is likely going to recurve. I don't see any model guidance at this point that threatens the East Coast. We saw a couple of dots that were close to the coast this time yesterday. But right now, if you look at the latest model guidance, for the most part, it's within our normal window of uncertainty to the west of Bermuda by a couple hundred miles and maybe approaching 70 degrees west, which means we could have some very dangerous beach conditions for New England, New Jersey, Long Island, and even Atlantic Canada for the first portion of next week. And Atlantic Canada actually really through the second half of next week as well. So this will be a well-behaved system. I don't expect we're going to get too many surprises other than the fact that this one could still strengthen quite a bit more than what the initial forecast for it is. If you look at the intensity models here, you see we get close to Category 5. Again, these don't always do a great job of picking up on rapid intensification. I would not be shocked if this ended up being underdone here, but you see where the trends are here. The models up here are probably going to get it right. The ones down here are not. But we will start to see weakening probably in about 36 to 48 hours at the end of the weekend. Here's a look at the HMON model showing a very healthy core, cleared out eye, pressure dropping down into the 940s and eventually 930s. There was one run of the European model, which had this getting down right below 920 millibars, which would definitely be Category 5. It has since tucked its tail a little bit on the intensity. Why? I have no idea. But you can see a very healthy structure here. And then eventually we start to see a little bit of the southwestern eye wall opening up as we get into early on Monday, indicating that weakening may begin. And then that continues as the storm gets bigger and bigger. And not as big as Aaron, but still one of our larger storms out here in the North Atlantic. So we'll talk more about Humberto here in the coming days, but we're going to focus the rest of the video on future Imelda. Invest 94L has been upgraded to, if you want to call it upgraded, to potential Tropical Cyclone 9. The reason the Hurricane Center calls it potential is to give the governments of countries that may be impacted time to prepare and to allow them to issue tropical storm watches and warnings, which have been done here. If you look at the water vapor image, you can see the trough imparting that southerly wind shear ahead of the system. You see the flow out of the south. It's still very difficult, though, to make out a center at this point. But we do see thunderstorm convection beginning to wrap up a little bit more here over the north coast of Cuba, and very heavy rain falling over Great Anagua here, which is the southern portion of the Bahamas. Heavy rain as well across the Turks and Caicos Islands. Here's a look at the Viz. And again, you can't really see enough of a low-level center at this point. It's still very broad. But if you take a look here, you can see a lot of thunderstorm activity and maybe a sort of a quasi center somewhere in here. So maybe there's a little bit of a weak low under here, but it's really difficult to point out. There's still some wind shear in place. There's kind of a trough axis that goes from, it's positively tilted southwest to northeast, and more of a mid-level center actually down in here. So we've got still some organization for this to have before it can strengthen. And so the longer it takes for that to happen, the more uncertainty we have in the forecast, but also the longer it takes to intensify, which would be a good sign. But right now, we do now have from the Bahamas a tropical storm warning. Central Bahamas, Cat Island, the Exumas, Long Island, Rum Cay, and San Salvador, and a tropical storm watch farther north and west for the northwestern Bahamas, Eleuthera, New Providence, the Abacos, Berry Islands, and Grand Bahama Island. We do not have tropical storm warnings for the southeastern Bahamas or the Turks and Caicos, but there will certainly be some threat for strong winds, flooding, and maybe localized severe weather and bands of rain and storms that come through. The storm is moving northwest at 9 miles per hour. It's 55 miles northwest of the eastern tip of Cuba, which puts it about 20 miles off the coast. Again, that's if we even really have a circulation, which we kind of don't. And maximum sustained winds are 35 miles per hour, keeping it just below tropical storm strength. So right now, this is the official track from the Hurricane Center. I'm going to refresh it. There's the watches. All right. They weren't there when I started my video. And the one thing that sticks out to me and probably everybody else on here is that the storm is expected to slow down and maybe substantially and perhaps before it gets to the coast. Now, I'm going to show you models here that still indicate that there could be impacts as soon as Monday morning on the coasts of Georgia, South Carolina, maybe even the lower coast of North Carolina. But the big question mark is going to be how this ends up playing out next week, because there are a lot of different scenarios, and I'm going to go over why there are here in the coming probably 10 to 12 minutes of this video. I like how Zoom Earth points this out, because you can see the intensity forecast does have this becoming a tropical storm later tomorrow evening, and then a strong tropical storm on Sunday, and then likely a hurricane by Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock on actually Monday. So Monday morning, we probably have a hurricane and continuing to be a hurricane. And then interestingly, because of increasing wind shear, they have dropped it off to a tropical storm. But I would still, if this forecast holds, I would count on a hurricane watch being issued for the coast of South Carolina, maybe for Georgia and North Carolina. But at this point, there's just way too much uncertainty. And the fact that the storm is going to grow, I would certainly be counting on watches and warnings being posted here at some point later this weekend, maybe even as soon as tomorrow night. So now would be the time to have your plans in place to prepare. I would not think about evacuating just yet, because there are still chances for this forecast to change. And the changes in the forecast actually could occur over the next 24 hours, the most drastic changes. And the reason why is that until the low-level center forms, we're still going to have a lot of uncertainty out of the get-go. Once we get that storm center to form, then things are going to start to come together. Now, this is a big mess, but what I do want to show you is if you look at the GFS, all righty, here's what we're running into. We have indeed lost our graphics because the storm got renamed. So, all right, well, bear with me. You can see here, the storm is likely to continue right on through the central and then northwestern Bahamas through the weekend, and then maybe approaching the southeastern coast sometime during the day on Monday. Now, what happens after that depends on which model you believe. We've got models which have a faster scenario, which bring this onshore into South Carolina and then slow it down substantially over Georgia and South Carolina. We even have opportunities for the storm to stall and then maybe return back into the ocean and come back out to the south and east. And then some of our slower scenarios, if the storm develops farther south or comes out a little bit slower, then allow the storm to slow down and not actually make landfall and maybe even stay a couple hundred miles offshore. While I'd say that would be the best case scenario, it's not that simple. If this storm does, in fact, do that, where it doesn't make it to the coast, it remains offshore, a few different things are going to happen. Number one, we are still going to have coastal impacts. So just because it doesn't make landfall doesn't mean we're not going to have problems on the coast. There'll be bands of rain. There could be even some tornado watches and warnings near the coast. But what also could happen down the road, I'm going to show this to you a little bit later, is that this thing isn't necessarily going to be racing away to the north and east. It could actually hang out for the bulk of next week. And there are some scenarios that bring it back closer to the coast over time because the steering currents are so weak that it doesn't know where it's going to end up going. So it may sound, I don't want to step on toes here or sound insensitive, but I think our best case scenario and our best behaved storm would be if this thing would just go ahead and make landfall and be a minimal hurricane or a stronger tropical storm and get it over with on Monday morning, because then it's going to go inland and weaken a lot quicker. Or just go ahead and turn away and not even touch the U.S. Actually, that would be the best case scenario. Are those likely to happen? It's looking less and less likely that would be the case. So we're going to be stuck with a mess trying to figure out. So these forecasts here are just extremely low confident. I know you're going to see things out there from other meteorologists and other folks talking about tracks and all of that, but let me just be the first to tell you here that this is going to be one of the most difficult storms that I've seen in over 20 years in trying to predict because of the interaction with Humberto to the east, because of the other two players on the map. And if you look at the ensembles here, this is the Google DeepMind. You see that there's clear agreement up until we get to about, let me back this up a little bit, until we get to about Sunday night. And then you've got models that are trying to make it to the coast, and you've got models that are slowing down and stalling over the Northwest Bahamas. And the closer that Humberto gets to Imelda, the more it's going to attract Imelda to it. Humberto is that guy that just, he's got all the looks, he's got all the money, and he says, Imelda, I can bring you to my you're coming home with me tonight. Use your imagination on that one. But Imelda, she might be a smart gal, and she may not she may resist the temptation and just come inland. uh, I'm sorry if I'm making light of this, but this is tense. This is tense for all of us here because this is the first storm that we really have to worry about in the U.S. aside from Chantal, which was a weaker system but did cause flooding close to my neck of the woods in North Carolina, actually in Orange and Durham counties. So we don't want to ignore that. But this would be the first potential hurricane or strong tropical storm. So you already see that we've got what looks like a bouquet of flowers sticking out from what should be a well-behaved track. We have things looping back to Georgia. We've got South Carolina being the more likely scenario for this to land. And then we've got models that are just hanging out on Tuesday, not knowing where the storm's going to go. Some of them following Humberto to his nice, lush mansion somewhere up in the hills, and others that unfortunately are hanging out in South Carolina and Georgia for a lot longer than we like. This is Friday night of next week. This is a week from today. And we have Google DeepMind models that still have this thing hanging out just off the coast. We have almost a third of them showing that happening. That's ridiculous. But that's something we need to be mindful of at this point. And, you know, there will be some wind shear. So I don't think if this thing sits over water all week, it's just going to rapidly intensify and keep going and going. It will have a limit to it. It may even go through phases where it drops down below hurricane strength, assuming it doesn't get torn apart, which I don't think it would. But yeah, this is chaotic. This is as crazy as you're going to see. The good news is that Humberto no longer looks to be an East Coast player. He's going. Whether or not Imelda follows him, that is the question at this point. I'll show you one other AI model. This is the Google GenCast. And you see, again, we've got Imelda trying to escape the wrath of Humberto, moving into South Carolina as soon as Monday afternoon or Monday night. We have some slower solutions, which are maybe saying later Monday night or Tuesday morning. And then if you miss the bus over here, you miss your flight, then you're stuck and you got to wait for the next day, or possibly you are turning away or you're driving to your destination or you're going back offshore. And I speak as somebody who is tired of flying and running into delays. And I'm sure some of you can certainly commiserate with me on that. But this is just a big mess. And I do want to talk about some possible scenarios and why it looks this way, because I think that's really important to understand the meteorology behind everything here. So if you take a look at the European global model, you see the area of high pressure settled in here over the central and southwestern Atlantic near Bermuda. You see the upper level low over the Tennessee Valley. This is tonight. You see the southwesterly and southerly flow over Florida. And then we've got future Imelda that's down here. We have Humberto, which clearly knows where he's going, but Imelda not quite sure just yet. What happens is that this trough is moving east, but this ridge is holding strong. There's just not enough room for all four on the map. Something's going to have to give here. So as we get into next week, what will happen is this upper level low is going to try to pull Imelda in, but Humberto is bigger and stronger, and he's going to try to pull Imelda out. And it's going to be a nasty tug of war here, a big custody battle over Imelda early next week. And when we get to Tuesday, this upper low is still in the picture. It's not just going away. And to make matters worse, we've got a big area of high pressure building over the Great Lakes, eventually scooting east. And that's going to build up and over this. And so this system can't escape to the north because that high will block it. It can't escape to the east because Humberto's there and this high here is blocking it. And it's not going to go into where the upper low is. So what's going to happen is it's probably going to get stuck between everybody. and it's either going to get squashed or it's going to hover and eventually find its way inland or ride the coast, or we just don't know. And so the soap opera continues. Get ready, folks. Here's a GFS model from earlier this afternoon, and you see Imelda is still on the GFS, likely to make a landfall. The GFS has been slower after landfall and stalls the system over South Carolina. It picks the state that geographically is the smallest in the entire Southeast and just washes it into the ground with heavy, heavy, heavy rain. And by the way, North Carolina, Northeast Georgia, the mountains, these areas need to be watching this very closely. We're not talking about another Helene. I know that was a year ago, but these same areas will be dealing with some heavy rain and maybe some possibly gusty winds and severe weather. Eventually, that high pressure area to the north is going to push south, but how far south it gets is a huge question mark. We are on the cusp of having a taste of true fall for the first weekend, but if you're at the coast, it may not quite make it all the way down if Imelda or a front still just hanging out. And if you're in Florida, you know that fall is not going to happen yet. That doesn't happen in October. We can only dream about that. Or you could just come up to Asheville and spend a weekend up in Boone or something, but maybe not this next weekend. So that's what we're looking at on the GFS. I will show you the European model. And again, the European has looked quite a bit different, but it is starting to fall in line with the GFS in bringing this towards South Carolina. It is slower. The GFS is moving in Monday night. The European still has it offshore as a Category 1 hurricane. And then it just pauses near Allendale, maybe tries to spin and spin and spin, and even rides back down the coast and goes back out. Here's the loop that nobody wants to see, because this is going to be really bad for Charleston. It'll be really bad for Georgetown County and for Horry County and even inland areas. And we just are stuck with constant bands of rain here, which look like they're going to continue probably until we get to the second half of next weekend. And that would be miserable. We do need rain, but we don't want to see this. That's for certain. The Canadian model, let me pull that one up for you here real quick. And you can see the Canadian model, first of all, is closer to Florida. I don't know if that will play out that way, but it does not come nearly as quickly as the European. So the GFS is first, then the European, and then the Canadian comes in third place if this were a race. And the Canadian says, because I'm slower, now Humberto is going to pull me back out to sea. And you can see that he loses his grip on Imelda, and then she's stuck, and my goodness, she's trying to make landfall near Topsail Island here on Saturday morning next weekend. Can you imagine that we have a tropical storm watch or warning or worse on the coast of North Carolina and South Carolina for 5 straight days? It may not play out that way, but that is a possibility if you believe this model. So a lot to be figured out here. That's the bottom line. Is I would prepare for Monday or Tuesday, some impacts for sure. Beyond that's Humberto. Beyond that, it's quite uncertain. It could be inland. It could be return to sender. It could be following Humberto. It could be way out to sea. It could just get grabbed by Humberto, and then that's that. But that's looking a lot less likely. So if you take a look at wind gusts here, you can see the bulk of the winds are probably going to hit South Carolina. I don't think Florida has too much to worry about, but it will be windy on the coast. Coastal Georgia, coastal North Carolina for sure. We do have to worry about some gusty winds here. The mountains could see some gustier winds depending on if this tries to make its way inland or not, which it may or may not. But this is the European model. If you look a little bit more closely, you can see the stronger winds are moving in Monday night. We have gusts of up to 40 miles per hour beginning to move into Georgetown County, around McClellanville, give or take, and then into Charleston as well, 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts if the European is right. But remember, the European's not bringing this storm inland, so we don't necessarily have to have a landfall to have problems. We still have strong winds that are in the area for several days here, right on through the weekend. The GFS is bringing the storm inland, and so it brings strong winds all the way up to Charlotte and upstate South Carolina sometime Tuesday night into early Wednesday. I'm not showing the severe weather threat, but we may have some tornadoes as well on the eastern side of this with dry air mixing in. Wind gusts along the potential track here, not super strong across the Bahamas just yet, but we could see gusts tomorrow night at 40 to 50 miles per hour, maybe even 60 around Nassau if the HAVS A model is correct. You can see this system strengthens substantially as it moves over Grand Bahama. This model shows it becoming a hurricane pretty rapidly Sunday and Sunday night, and then coming close to Florida, but not super close, and then continuing up the coast and making landfall or trying to make landfall very close to the Georgia-South Carolina border, but unfortunately not coming in quickly. So let's take a deep breath and let's just know that this could be a substantially bad system, but it may not necessarily go all the way in places that saw it in. I mean, Helene, the storm was moving 25 miles per hour last year. This system could be moving 25 feet per hour if some of the models are correct. It's ridiculous. We'll have some heavy rain through the weekend, but obviously we've got to be concerned with the tropical storm or hurricane next week. The GFS paints a very grim picture with very heavy rain over the next 10 days over South Carolina, potentially more than 15 inches in parts of the Midlands and towards the coast as well. North Carolina could be in on some of this heavy rain. Virginia could see locally heavy rain. Even East Tennessee and the mountains could see several inches of rain. Here's the European model, which is slower, but we don't want to discount it. Because the European hangs out at the coast, we see areas that were hit really bad by Hurricane Florence back in 2018 getting similar amounts of rain potentially. And you all know what a stalled system can do. So we're going to stop right there. We could be talking about this all night. I will be heading to the beach tomorrow. I'm going to do a quick video in the morning. I'm going to try to get back on in the evening when I get back with my family. Then I'm traveling for a few days for work. So I'm going to try to do things as I travel from my laptop again. So I appreciate everybody's patience. We are going to end here with a word of God for the people of God, because I am a Christian and that's what drives me to do what I do every day. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10. We serve a wonderful God, and he is not to be feared, but to be worshiped, to be revered, to be turned to in times of difficulty, because God is here to strengthen us. Through Jesus Christ, his son, he can strengthen anyone who chooses to believe in him spiritually, lifting you out of the depths and the darkness that you have here on earth. When I turned to Christ in 2013, I didn't want to look back because I knew where I was coming from. And I still remember where I came from. And that still is a part of who I am today. But the wonderful part about being a Christian is being able to share the hope that I have now with others who maybe don't have that same level of hope. Because there surely is a prize in heaven awaiting everyone who chooses to follow Jesus Christ. That is a promise. We have seen miracles before. We will see additional miracles. I hope everybody stays safe and has a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining me here. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I will be back on here probably twice a day here over the next few days as time allows. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend.